She also says, neither is it the national establishment. Who knows what the national establishment is? Well, if you look up national establishment in the dictionary from Ellen White's day, Webster's 1828 dictionary says, for the word national, pertaining to a nation as national customs, dress, or language. Number 2, public, general, common to a nation as a national calamity. Number 3, attached or unduly attached to one's own country. And if you look up the word establishment, it says the act of establishing, founding, ratifying, or ordaining. Number 1, settlement, a fixed state. Confirmation, ratification of what has been settled or made. Settled regulation, form, ordinance, system of laws, constitution of government. Fixed or stated allowance for subsistency, income and salary. That which is fixed or established. The episcopal form of religion. Okay? So, now if you take what she says here, it's not the national establishment. In other words, it's not what the state recognizes as the religion. What is it that the state recognizes as a religion? It's called a 501c3 corporation. That's what the state recognizes. But there's a lot more to it than just the 501c3 corporation, because if you take all of this definition and you apply it to this, it's not the establishment, it's not the system of laws, it's not the government of any system of religious belief. In other words, the church is not the conference, the church is not the Seventh-day Adventist bylaws, policies, church manuals, rules or regulations. It's not any of that, because that is all part of the national establishment. But it also says that it's not the episcopal form of religion. What's episcopal mean? In the same dictionary, I looked up the word episcopal, and it means belonging to or vested in bishops or prelates, governed by bishops. So in other words, the church, God has a church, and it is not the authority or the influence invested in the leadership. She also specifies that it is not the various denominations. The word denomination means the act of naming, a class, society, or collection of individuals called by the same name as a denomination of Christians. So in other words, what she's just said here is that everything that we commonly recognize as a religion, any religion, Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist, she says that's not what constitutes a church. So what is it that she says constitutes a church? It is the people who love God and keep His commandments. And then she adds another dimension to this. She says, for the presence of the high and holy one who inhabiteth eternity can alone constitute a church. So in other words, if you want to find out what the church is, first off, it has to be people. They have to love God. They have to be obeying His law to the best of their knowledge. But, and foremost, it has to have the presence of God. Because, and this is what I want everybody, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation today, this is what I want you to remember. If the presence of God is not in their midst, according to Sister White, it does not constitute a church. Now remember what we've just seen from the sanctuary. We have one sanctuary. This whole thing is one unit. But now it's split up into three parts. So here you have the structure. We'll call it the structure. And you have the division, the breach that happened there. Here was heaven. All of this was actually heaven, but there's the throne of God. Here's the earth. And, of course, we're in the earth. But, if you'll remember right, you remember the vision that Ellen White had about the path? Remember, she looked in the world for God's people. She couldn't see them. And then the angel told her, look again and look higher. Because the path that the faithful people are on is not in the world. It's higher. That's the holy place. And if you'll notice this, the holy place is where heaven and earth overlap. So we're in the earth, but we're not of the earth. So that's where we're supposed to be at. So in order for God to repair the breach, to fix this separation that's taking place among the members of His church, He has to do something. What does He do in order to repair this breach? Look at Romans 5, verse 10. Romans 5, verse 10. Romans 5, verse 10 says, "For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of His Son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by His life." So what happened for God to repair this breach? Jesus Christ had to come and die for us, right? Because it says we were reconciled by the death of His Son. Okay? So, in the sanctuary, what happened when Christ died? Mark 15, 37 and 38. "And Jesus cried with a loud voice and gave up the ghost. And the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom." Okay, so here we've got the church, and we have a separation that's taken place. Something that separated God from man. And so Christ comes and He dies in order to repair that separation. And that veil is torn in half. Now uniting those that are in the holy place with those that are in the most holy place. You starting to get a picture here? The whole plan of salvation is based on God restoring His church from where they fell. All right, let's look at another quote here that shows that the church has existed all through time, ever since the beginning. 4 manuscript releases, page 293. "God had a church when Adam and Eve and Abel accepted and hailed with joy the good news that Jesus was their Redeemer. These realized as fully then as we realize now the promise of the presence of God in their midst. Whenever Enoch found one or two who were willing to hear the message he had for them, Jesus joined with them in their worship of God. In Enoch's day, there were some among the wicked inhabitants of the earth who believed. The Lord never yet has left His faithful few without His presence, nor the world without a witness." So here, at the very beginning, she says that God had a church, and that church consisted of Adam, Eve, and Abel. And there was the presence of God right there in their midst. This is from Acts of the Apostles, page 11. "The church is God's fortress, His city of refuge, which He holds in a revolted world. Any betrayal of the church is treachery to Him who has bought mankind with the blood of His only begotten Son. From the beginning, faithful souls have constituted the church on earth. In every age the Lord has had His watchmen who have borne a faithful testimony to the generation in which they lived. These sentinels gave the message of warning, and when they were called to lay off their armor, others took up the work. God brought these witnesses into covenant relationship with Him, uniting the church on earth with the church in heaven. He has sent forth His angels to minister to His church, and the gates of hell have not been able to prevail against His people." Amen. Now see how she uses this? Talking about the angels and the church and the people, all as if it's one unit. Now this concept that we've just gone over here is really important for us to understand, because today the majority of people are falling for a major deception of Satan. You will notice that Satan always likes to take what God has and he likes to flip it around. He likes to make it totally opposite. A good example of that would be the seventh-day Sabbath. God put the Sabbath at the end of the week, but Satan took and he flipped it, and he makes the Sabbath at the beginning of the week. So he's just taken and done that with what God had. This is what Satan has also done with the word church. God organized his faithful people, his church, into a structure. He organized them into a system, and he gave them a name, a denomination, Seventh-day Adventists. Look at this quote. "We are Seventh-day Adventists. Are we ashamed of our name? We answer, no, no, we are not. It is the name the Lord has given us. It points out the truth that is to be the test of the churches." And in 8th volume of the Testimonies it says, God is to be recognized and honored by the people calling themselves Seventh-day Adventists. So who gave us our name? God did. But now Satan comes along and he flips it around. So now the church, it's not the church organized into a structure, it's people organized into a church. Do you see how Satan has flipped it? He's flipped the meaning in our minds. Let me give you an example. What group does this represent? Pretty much most anybody would say Christians, but they're dead wrong. That represents pagans. The cross is a pagan symbol. The cross is a pagan symbol, and it can be traced all the way back to Babylon, to the Tower of Babel, to the worship of Tammuz and sun worship. That's the reason why Satan had Christ crucified on a cross, because it was the most derogatory thing he could do to Christ at the very end. He had him crucified on a cross. The true symbol for Christianity is Christ, who was hanging on that cross. But now Satan has taken and made everybody focus on the structure instead of on the person. See the flip? So now everybody practically worships that pagan symbol. They wear it around their necks, they wear it in their ears, they tattoo it all over their bodies, they stick stickers of it all over their cars and everywhere else you can think of. And all the while, they ignore the true symbol of Christianity, which is Jesus Christ, and they go out and they commit all kinds of sins while they've got crosses all over them. This is what Satan has done with our church. He's convinced us that the organization, that the structure, is what constitutes the true church. And by doing that, well, it's real easy for him to get in and mislead a few of the leaders, and suddenly he gets everybody, because everybody has been taught that, well, the structure is the church, and if the leaders say something, well, then we have to be faithful to the church. We have to follow what the leaders say. Let's look at the typology of Israel and see. You should like typology.